Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I am doing my last book haul of the year. I thought that the book haul I did in November was going to be my last book haul of the year, but I forgot about the holidays. Hanukkah was at the beginning of December and I got some Barnes & Noble gift cards for Hanukkah, and also my family has this tradition of doing book night where we all go to Barnes & Noble together and get books together. So I picked up quite a few books because of that. I also have a couple of used books that I got because I finally got around to donating the books from my last unhaul. So my last unhaul video was posted like maybe 2 or 3 months ago or something, and those books have just been sitting in my house in a box waiting to be donated. So I finally got around to donating them, but of course when I was in a used bookstore I had to look around, and I picked up a couple of books there as well. But when I was there I only bought like 3 used books and I donated like 50, so I still came home with fewer books than I left with, so I felt pretty good about that. But yeah, I have about 10 books here, I think, so let's just get into it. Last book haul of the year. So I'm going to start off with the 3 books that I got from the used bookstore. The first one I have here is Daring Greatly: How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead by Brene Brown. I have been reading a couple of Brene Brown books. I read 2 of her books in the last like couple of months and I've been enjoying them. I've actually been listening to the audiobooks, and I like having the physical book as well so that I can take notes and underline and things like that. This one does have some highlighting in it already. You can see here somebody has highlighted in it, but I think that that will be fine. It probably won't bother me very much. It might be interesting to see what somebody else thought was important to highlight in this book as I go through it. And the next book that I have is another nonfiction, which is The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell: How Little Things Can Make a Big Difference. And this one, my understanding of what this book is about is that it's about how certain ideas or trends or innovations or things like that kind of all happen at once and sort of rise into society's consciousness, or just like into the zeitgeist all at one time, and like what is the tipping point of what makes something become into our consciousness like that. I think that's what it's about. But I think that that sounds like a really interesting topic if that is what this book is actually about. And Malcolm Gladwell is a really popular author, so I've been wanting to read something by him. And this is another one that I'm going to probably be listening to the audiobook of it, but I wanted to have a physical copy so that I could take notes if I wanted to. And the last book that I got from the used bookstore was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This is a historical fantasy that takes place in London in the 1800s, I think, and there's like a magician's guild in London. This book also apparently has fairies in it, which I just recently found out. This is one that I've seen around for a long time. It usually comes up right around when there is a tome topple because it is a very chunky book. So a lot of people read this for tome topple, and somehow I managed to never really understand what this book was about. And then I recently saw Kara from Wild Book Garden talking about it on her channel, and she mentioned that there are fairies in it and that she likes the way that the fairies are done in this. And that really like intrigued me, especially since I had never really realized there were fairies in it before. But I really enjoy like well done fairies. So I decided to pick this one up. Then on to some of the books that I got from Barnes & Noble. The first one I have is Dog Songs by Mary Oliver. This is a book of poetry that's all about dogs. And I was just like, I can't pass this up. I enjoy Mary Oliver as a poet, but I also love dogs, and I was like, this is the perfect combination of things: Mary Oliver, poetry, dogs. Like, I'm so ready for this. And I am also so ready for somebody else who just like deeply appreciates dogs to the point that she would write poetry, because dogs are so worthy of like mountains of poetry being written about them because they are wonderful. And next up I have Beneath the Citadel by Destiny Soria. This is one that I have been seeing on the shelves for like months, and like every time I see it, it just calls to me, and I really want it for some reason. So I finally decided to pick it up. This is a YA fantasy in which I believe there's a corrupt government and there is a rebellion going on. When I picked this up and like flipped through it, I like to read little bits and pieces of books to kind of see if I like the writing. The very first scene in it, someone is on trial for treason, and I was like, well, this, like, I want to know how this goes. And then I found a random place in it where someone was talking about having like absorbed too many memories and needing an antidote for it, and I was like, well, that just sounds like interesting magic that like now I need to know more. So I decided to finally get this one. Then I also picked up An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. This is one that was kind of making the rounds last year. I think it came out last year and everybody was talking about it. There were kind of mixed reviews on it, but a lot of people at least agreed that it is a very atmospheric book. It is another YA fantasy. This one has the Fae in it, and the main character is an artist who makes the mistake, I think, of painting human sorrow into the expression of a Fae lord, and that causes all kinds of problems for them and is what starts the story off. Personally, I really like a good atmospheric read. Good atmosphere can make up for a lot in a book, for me at least, so I want to at least try this one, and it's a pretty short book, so I think this will be a good one for sometimes I read a lot of really dense, long fantasy books all in a row, and then I just need something that is quick and fun and easy. And the next book that I have is A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. I hope that's how you say their name. I don't really know. But this is one that I've seen a couple of people talking about on BookTube, so when I saw it, I decided to pick it up. It sounds like it is going to be a mix of a lot of political themes, but also probably very whimsical is my impression. The main character, Ophelia, is being married off for political advantage, and then her husband whisks her away to another city where she finds out that he is also going to be using her as a political pawn. And so there are definitely some political themes in it. But my impression is that it is also written in a very whimsical way, or set in a very whimsical land or world. So I think that that will be really fun. I hope that there is a good balance of those like politics, but also the whimsy. I enjoy good whimsical books, so I am looking forward to this one. Then I also picked up Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. So Michael J. Sullivan is a fantasy author that has another series called, I think, the Rhaeria Revelations. That is usually the one I've heard people talk about when they talk about him. And I do want to read that one eventually, but it has never quite called out to me to the point that I was going to actually like buy one of the books. Whereas this is another one I have seen on the shelf for actually like years and always kind of wanted it, and finally decided to pick it up. So I thought I would give this one a try. The reason I've always wanted it, one, is because I like the title Age of Myth. I enjoy myths, so that just like calls to me. But also on the cover, there's a giant tree. And if we've learned anything, it's that I like trees, and it's very easy to sell me on a book if there's a tree on the cover. It's very easy. So that's a lot of what motivated me to get this book. But it does also sound like it is going to be an interesting story. In this world, there are gods and humans, but one day, one of the gods is killed by a human, and this shows that the gods are not immortal and they are able to be harmed by humans, and that changes the power dynamic between the gods and the humans and creates a struggle between them. I think that that sounds like a really interesting story, and I like stories that have gods in them, and especially gods that are like highly involved in the humans around them. So I think this one will be really interesting. And then I also got Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri, and this is one that I saw Jocelyn from Yogi with a Book talking about. I have recently been like binge watching her channel and really enjoying it, and this is one of the books that she has been really excited about recently, so I really wanted to pick it up. This is a desert fantasy, which is not a very common fantasy setting that I have seen, which I think will be really interesting. It also has devas in it, which should be a really interesting element to the story. The main character is the illegitimate daughter, I believe, of a governor, but from her mother's side she has magic in her blood, and there are many people who would want to use that magic for their own political agendas. And then the one that I actually meant to buy when I went to Barnes & Noble was The Lost Queen by Signe Pike. I'm probably saying that name so incorrectly, and I'm sorry about that. But this is a historical fantasy set in Scotland, and it follows the sister of Merlin. She is trying to protect her people and their land and preserve the old ways and the ways of the Druids, while there are new people and their new religions and traditions coming into the land. And this is one that I have kind of mixed feelings about on a lot of levels. One is that I like Celtic inspired historical fantasy is a subgenre that I really enjoy. But I'm not usually a fan of Arthurian legends. I don't know how connected to Arthurian legends this will be, because this is the sister of Merlin, so I don't know if it's like her going off on her own totally separate story, or if she's going to be interacting with the traditional stories of like King Arthur. Also, I have seen a couple of people like loosely compare this to Juliet Marillier, which I love. So if it's anything like that, that would be amazing. But also, some of the blurbs that are on this book say that it's like a mix of The Mists of Avalon and Outlander, and I don't like either of those books. So I don't know what to think about this. I don't know how this book will go. I'm really intrigued by it. I really hope that it will be great, but I'm like a little bit wary. And then I have one last book that I almost forgot to haul, but I remembered while I was filming, which is Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. This is one that I ordered a very long time ago. I actually pre-ordered it, and Book Depository only recently decided to send it to me. This is the sequel to Vicious by V.E. Schwab, and there's been lots of hype about this book on BookTube. It just recently, well, at this point not recently, but it just came out a couple months ago, and people have been very excited about it. I was very excited about it because I read Vicious in January and absolutely loved it. So I am really excited to get to Vengeful now that I finally have it. So that is all for my last book haul of the year. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!